so much for bearing with us. I know we got a little bit of a late start. We are trying to hustle and put everything in order behind the scenes. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your patience. I am going to start us off with some very quickly. First of all, my name is Lacey Campbell. I am one of your co-moderators today. And Kyle, do you want to introduce yourself? And then
I'm Kyle Osier, the other moderator for today.
Great. I'm already changing the order. So we have a new wonderful thing for me to read to you. And here it is. Please get ready. Please note that this event is being recorded and may be posted on TEA social media or other TEA digital platforms in the future. If you turn your camera or microphone on, the audio or video feed from your device may be captured on the recording. Take care to conceal from view and not share material that is private, sensitive, or confidential. So if you are on the lam or off the grid or in any sort of protection program, please take note accordingly. And with that, I believe we can hand this over to our International Board President, Mr. Chuck Fawcett, unless I'm missing anything. Are we good for that?
I think we're good for that. Thanks,
Great.
Lacey, and thanks for the comic relief there, starting us off. We're how are we all feeling today? Good?
Yeah.
Can I get a whoop whoop? Come on, everybody. Whoop whoop. Raise your hands here. Okay. No, we're really happy to have you all joining us today. I think this is our second in our series of town hall events that we've had. That's consistent with our message and our mission as a new EC to be as transparent and connected with all the TEA members as we possibly can. And obviously this is a work in progress. Our ability to communicate with you and connect with you is only as good as your willingness to reach out and connect with us. So as we have these town hall discussions and similar types of discussions, we really want to encourage you to step up and participate. You know, we say that the best democracies are ones that have full participation, and that's really what makes us successful as the TEA. Really committed to listening to you and taking into account your ideas and suggestions. Don't think that they're too crazy. We want to hear it all, and we're working really hard behind the scenes to really transform the TEA into something that is meaningful, awesome, as well as supportive of all of you and your businesses out there around the globe. So with that, I wanted to introduce our executive committee today that's going to be taking some questions that have come in over the last couple of weeks that Lacey and Kyle have compiled. We'll start out with Shannon Martin, who's Vice President on our TEA board. Melissa Rumino, who is another Vice President on our board, joining from Orlando and Las Vegas in that order. We've got Nathan Jones joining us from Victoria. He's also a Vice President on our board. And Mr. Matt Barton joining from the UK, who's our TEA Secretary on the Executive Committee. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Brian Sands, who's our illustrious treasurer in command of all things financial on behalf of the TEA and the Executive Committee. So we're here today to take your questions, both the questions that were submitted ahead of time, as well as questions that might be put in the chat. We're trying to not make the rules. We're trying to leave the rulemaking up to Kyle and Lacey to keep this a vibrant and sparky conversation today. So I'll pass it back to the two of you and we'll get started.
So Sparky. And one last thing, just housekeeping. Those of you on desktops, or laptops, if you'd hit do not disturb so that any messages that you have coming in don't come out to all of us in case you're not on mute. Thank you.
All right. So if we're ready to hop into the questions, the first question, a lot of these, just fair warning, I know last time we had everyone read their questions, but almost all these came in anonymously this time around. So you'll be hearing a lot more of me and Kyle. So the first one that came in is, due to the financial constraints that TEA currently faces, as reported in the last town hall, has the board and the rest of TEA leadership considered making a change in location or creation of a fully virtual TEA at headquarters to reduce the financial liability on TEA's budget? And Ms. Melissa, I believe this one's going to you.
Yeah, thanks, Lacey. So honestly, everything is on the table constantly. We're constantly looking at all of our operating expenses, both from a physical location standpoint and then the way that we support staff and the staff needs to support the membership. as of right now, we do not intend to move the office or go 100% virtual. But could that be on the table in the future? Absolutely. We actually are looking at our overall operating expenses right now on every aspect, from IT to rent space to physical location to how we streamline and take advantage of the discounts offered to us as a nonprofit association, and looking at all of those to help our overall operating expenses. The other thing that I just want to mention, because it ties to this just slightly, is that we did just hire 2 new staff members. They're also on the call. So we hired Betsy Powell, who's our Marcom manager. She is based virtually, so she's based in Georgia. So the idea of having virtual-based employees is something that we're absolutely on board with. And then also Terry is based in Burbank. She's our admin. So as we've been onboarding these 2 employees, the ability to go back in the office and team build and collaborate together has been a huge benefit for these employees. So it's on the table, but it's not in the plans right now to go 100% virtual.
All right. I guess I'll read the next question. Okay, the next question from David Gray says, the email flyer states fantastic attendance with respect to the last geographic breakdown showing 78, with a pie chart of a geographic breakdown showing 78% US attendees, though that info was not available on Instagram. What have the panel done since the last town hall to promote and encourage a higher international attendance? There is also only one non-American based panelist or board member. Is this representative of how the TEA is moving forward, or are there still concrete plans to internationalize the international board? And I'll hand that off to Matt Barton.
Okay, thanks, Carl, and thanks, David. So I'm going to start by just sharing a graph, which we really should have shared in the original email. I stand by the fact that it was fantastic attendance, but I completely get the point you're making, David. But perhaps if I share this as well, it helps. So it was fantastic attendance, and it also was pretty representative of our geographical split. I apologize, I don't have the percentages on the graph on the right there, but hopefully that gives you a better indication of how representative the attendance was. That's not to say we can't do better. We absolutely can and should and want to. So to answer the question of what are we doing about it, prior to today's town hall, we reached out to all of the regional presidents and regional boards, and we asked them to please reach out to their membership, engage with people, encourage them to attend this event, because this event really is what the membership make of it. And that leads us neatly on to the next point, which is about the panelists. So the panelists for the last and for this town hall are the executive committee. And there are 2 non-American members in the executive committee, I should point out. But that's not the intention going forward. The intention going forward is the panel for the town hall will chop and change. And the only reason we haven't already started that is because there's so much in the works right now. It felt a bit unfair to some of our new committee chairs, committee members, the kinds of people that we would want to get on these panels, to throw them in at the deep end right now, when they're literally just in the early phases of getting their feet under them, getting these committees moving. So hopefully that answers those points. I think we have a related question, Carl, that Chuck's going to comment, which is more about the answers the internationalizing international board side of things. So perhaps if I can hand back to you and to Chuck.
Sure thing.
Yeah, do you want me to go ahead and read that one?
Yeah, let's do it.
That is, does the TEA boards, do the TEA boards represent the global diversity of the membership with people from different regions and countries? If not, are there any considerations regarding how the board will be composed in the future?
What a great question. Before I get into answering that, I do want to pay props to the executive committee and Matt Barton for taking on the task of the tremendous work of getting our various committees and task forces launched this year. You know, to Matt's point, this has been a really great way of gathering together our international community to participate at a higher level in a more meaningful way. I don't know if you all are aware of this, but we've formed 6 standing committees since January and 4 task forces. And that's well over 100 new people that are putting their time and energy into the TEA, helping us behind the scenes, you know, in the gap that we have without having our executive director in place, as well as, you know, just listening to all of you who have reached out to us, who have said, hey, I want to get involved. I want to set a course for myself towards board membership at some point in time. I want to get out there. I want to get known. I want to do that because I want to volunteer my time, but I also want to let more people know about my company and what I do and how I fit into our industry. So Matt, thank you for leading that effort and getting that process organized. You know, the effort of trying to be mindful of our global TEA membership, it's a big one. You know, when we look at the statistics, we see that we've got about 80% of our overall membership is based in North America, and the remaining 20%, about 5% in Asia Pacific, and about 15% represented in Europe and the Middle East collectively. You know, TEA started almost 30 years ago with a small group of vendors based in Los Angeles who were struggling to try to figure out, you know, how to do business better and how to survive, frankly. And that naturally started out as a very, you know, kind of US centric conversation, if not a California centric conversation. And I think nobody really knew at that time. Monty Lundy probably couldn't have predicted how far we'd come, how far and fast we'd come. And here we are today being a truly global association. We stand for global connections. We stand for, you know, providing networking and business opportunities, you know, across borders and across time zones. I think we all very, very easily take for granted how fluent it is now to have conversations with people all over the world, and we don't think twice about it. I mean, look at the group of people represented today. I can't wait to see the statistics, Matt, after this town hall to see what our participation looks like. But we've got people from all corners of the world. It's exciting. So, you know, is that good enough? No, it's not. Can we do better? Yes, we can. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, the process of transforming a board like the International Board of the TEA doesn't happen overnight. You know, we have one opportunity annually to facilitate turnover, and that turnover is highly dependent on people, you know, stepping up and, you know, stepping up to the call. You know, we send out emails, we ask for people who feel like they're qualified to run for an international board seat to throw their name in the hat, to put themselves out there. So that's one level that, you know, sort of either enhances the field or limits the field, if you will. Then we have the whole level of, well, these people, once we decide who the best candidates are to put forward, now it's all up to you to vote for them. So if everyone's voting for Americans and no one's voting for Europeans or Asians, then there's nothing really we can do about that other than continue to encourage participation. And that is in the spirit of democracy. You know, we want to be an association that represents you, but we're limited in our ability to do so if you don't participate in that conversation. I know last year with the composition of the board, as I came in as the president-elect, one of the primary responsibilities of the incoming president is to facilitate the election process, to chair the election committee, if you will. And I remember, you know, the first thing I did was look at the current composition of the I board, take into account what our vision and goals are and were as an association, and say, you know what, let's, you know, I don't want to be so subject to anybody who's going to just step up. So who are qualified candidates out there that I can have conversations with? And I know many people on the town hall today. I talked to many of you, encourage you to step up, not just for the international board, but for our regional boards as well. You know, hey, it may not occur to people just to simply step up and volunteer their time. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a nudge and a push in that direction. So, if all of you, as we approach this next election cycle, if all of you are aware of those superstars out there that help us really walk the walk of being a more diverse, board with better gender diversity, better racial diversity, regional cultural diversity, please reach out and encourage those people to step forward. And we will welcome them with open arms and make sure that they get put on the ballot. But we can't do it without you. All that said, I'm very proud of the fact that currently our board composition is 1/3 female, 2/3 male, and we've got great international representation on the board. Can we keep going in that direction? Yes. Can we do better? Yes. But let's be mindful and celebrate our victories, small as they may seem, and realize this is going to be a multi-year process to get us, to our eventual goals of being truly representative of our membership. Thank you.
A thought is happening right here before you. It's something to consider. People vote for the people they know, and maybe just a thought that worth developing, but perhaps we could change the way we present candidates, like with a personal video where people can get a sense of them. We could maybe have a web page where everybody who's standing for office can say why, like a 2-minute video. We could do a panel, but I don't want to end up with it like a debate, but if there's a way to present people and their personalities so that it gives people an opportunity for an objectivity in the context of TEA, rather than, I think we're all guilty. I know I'm like, I don't know this other person and I know her. So that's where the vote goes. And to address that, to cross our borders, maybe something, I'm just throwing that out there as a concept to maybe develop where we can, not everybody's great on camera, but I think that's doable because I think we're such a welcoming group. So,
hey, Kyle, luckily
yes.
we have a brand new marketing communications manager who can help put some guidelines around.
That's why you're nodding, Betsy.
Yep. And look, yeah, I think it's a great idea. And it's something that I know when I was board president of the Eastern Division, it was really a challenge to make sure that we were getting the right diversification on our board that represented not just people in Orlando, but people in other geographic regions and who might serve in other industries other than just theme parks, right? So it's a great point. And I know to shift the way we vote is a whole changing of bylaws, which is a huge undertaking, which is always on the table also. But in the near term, there could be some marketing communication venues that we can take, and happily can task Betsy with starting to think about that as we go into election cycles.
Great.
And Kyle, just to make one more comment, I love that idea you just tossed out about personalizing the process. We are geographically separated here, and it's difficult to know without falling into the typical, clubby thing that TEA sometimes just naturally happens. For all of us to know all of us, and to make informed decisions about who our next leaders will be. I know that, not to put her on the spot, but Yael Koifman, who's our EME president, has lightly lifted her hand and volunteered to start investigating our election process that may, in the near term here, turn into a task force focused on how we do our elections, how we curate candidates, and how we present them to our membership. So that'll be something, again, realize we're all catching our breath right now with the 6 committees and 4 task forces that we've launched so far, and we're trying to really chip away at the iceberg here, but that is very much squarely in our agenda to make some improvements in that area. And hopefully Yael will continue to be an advocate for that.
Cool.
Kyle, if I can just jump in and answer a couple of points that have been made in the chat here. They're really good points and really tricky ones to solve. So two key areas. One is, are all the right people receiving the ballot? And then the even more complicated one of, is it fair that only one person for each company gets to vote? So the first one is hopefully the slightly easier one to solve. There is a lot of work being done by the communications task force led by Joe Fox to figure out our communications tools and make them better so that our emails really do get to everyone that they should. The second one is a more complicated one, and Clara has already started a conversation in the chat about this, of making sure that we get fair representation. So when you have the big companies and small companies, how do we make sure that if every member of a member company gets a vote, then suddenly the big companies dominate. So that is a really tricky one to resolve. It also goes to our bylaws, which makes it, even if we do resolve it, even if we come up with the answer, it's a lengthy process to change our procedures. So I'm just kind of back to Melissa's earlier point, everything's on the table right now. We're looking at lots of things, but some of these things are easier to fix than others. And that one is a tricky one, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be looked at.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Well, then I'll read a question. The next question, also from Klaus Summer Paulson. If a member wants to contribute to the TEA on another level than helping out in an event, let's say an experienced senior or leader, what other options are there besides joining a board?
Yeah,
right.
I'll take this. Thanks, Kyle, and thank you, Klaus, for that question. You know, it's certainly a situation that applies to a lot of our members that are mid-level and above. And yeah, fundamentally, TEA is about connecting its members and helping to spread knowledge and opportunities. With that in mind, you know, we're constantly reviewing our education series and thinking about ways that we can engage with our members in you know, more meaningful ways and processes, and also how to provide thought leadership and knowledge sharing opportunities. You know, as a part of that, we've actually recently formed a new education committee with MK Haley as chair. Thank you very much, MK, for stepping up. I know that's a fantastic role, and I know you're very busy with that. This committee is really just starting to get off the ground, but one of its key efforts will be to develop new initiatives that reach a truly global audience and perspective. So, you know, that presents a good opportunity for involvement. That's one case. We're also very close to launching a beta test for the TEA mentorship program. This is a program that will assign mentors to mentees and allows those who are interested in participating to sign up for potential matching. This program has been years in the making. It has a dedicated task force from the Next Gen Committee who have put in a tremendous amount of work to help make this program a world-class offering of the TEA. So thanks to the Next Gen Committee as well. And again, this is another really good opportunity for mid-level and senior people to be involved and give back. In addition, we have 2 nomination cycles that are opening soon. The first is for the Masters of the Craft. This celebrates individuals who've achieved excellence within their specific discipline. And the second, of course, is the 28th annual THEA submission, which celebrates projects and innovations of excellence. These, again, are both great opportunities for experienced members to be recognized. In both cases, it takes really a team of people to review those nominations, to go through the very deep process that's involved in you know, putting those people forward and those projects forward as well. So there's a few ideas, I would say, and you know, we're very glad to help facilitate people who want to get involved in the association more thoroughly. So please also reach out, you know, to those that you know that are leaders and are directly involved with the association to help facilitate your involvement. And, you know, many thanks to everyone who contributes to the association.
Brian, that was amazing, because I just had a private question come in asking me to ask about the mentorship program, and you did it. So great.
Boom.
Boom. All right. So moving on, our next question comes in March 2021, the Everyday Psychic Abilities to Help You Zoom event crossed a cultural line by casually entertaining the disproven and dangerous practice of phrenology and encouraging other assumptions based on physical appearance. As an international organization that's based in many existing cultures, number 1, how is the TEA going to repair the harm done? And number 2, how does the TEA plan to support members as they grow in cultural competency? And I believe this one's going to Nathan and or Matt.
Yeah,
Matt,
so
why don't you start off? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
yeah, thanks, Nathan. So yeah, I think the first thing I want to say on this is I have learned a lot since that event. It's been a difficult one to get my head around. And therefore I've written myself some notes here. So I apologize if you realize that I'm reading this rather than speaking busking as I normally do. But I just wanted to kind of feedback and give you my considered thoughts on this based on what happened. So I attended the event and I attended it thinking that it was just an event where we were going to learn about some tools and techniques. And I left it thinking it was an event where we had learned about some tools and techniques. And I really didn't think anything more about it. Some of the tools that were discussed, I thought, yeah, that could be useful and helpful. And some of them I thought, that's not for me. And I truly and honestly believe that's what the event was intended to be as well. However, after the event, we received some complaints and some concerns raised. And that's where things started to go wrong for me. I went down the wrong path. In a very misguided effort, I thought, I know the people that ran this event. I know that I'm absolutely confident that it came from a good place and that they would be mortified to hear that they'd offended or upset anyone. So I made the wrong decision. I decided not to mention it to them. I thought it would probably go away. There's no point upsetting things further. We'll learn from it, but no point carrying on. That was the wrong thing to do. What I should have done and what I eventually did do was I engaged in the conversation with the hosts and I engaged in the conversation with the people that had raised the concerns. And as soon as that happened, I started to learn, and I think everyone else started to learn. I learned a lot about things that, history about phrenology and the tools and techniques that were discussed that I knew nothing about, and therefore it had not triggered for me as something that we should be even considering as a worry. So I learned a lot. But the question is, where do we go now? All I can answer that with is to restate the purpose of our diversity and inclusion committee and restate the position of the TEA on these things, which is that we're absolutely committed to continuously improving all of our programming. And a key part of the process in that is receiving feedback from attendees. What I would really encourage though is if you're feeding back, if you possibly can, and I appreciate it's not always the case, but if you possibly can, please feedback in person and put your name to it. It makes it so much easier for us to engage in the conversation. If you wish to be anonymous, that's fine too, of course. But if you can, it really helps us learn more because then we can engage in the conversation. And also we can engage in the conversation with the people that put the events on. Are we going to have events that cause upset in the future? Yes, we will. Because we can't review the exact wording of every event before it goes out. And also, as we grow culturally as an organization, as we have more speakers from more places around the world, there are going to be some things that trigger some people's sensitivities and don't trigger others. Just as I didn't know any of the background about some of the things that cause problems in this event, that's going to happen more and more. So my feeling is, how do we repair the damage done? We have the conversation, we engage in conversation. And that's the best I can offer. And I know Nathan's going to talk a bit more about what the committee are doing. So I'll hand over to Nathan.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think that's a huge consideration in terms of the event that happened, but the fact that we had the conversation. And these are challenges for the TEA that there's no way that we're going to conquer them as individuals. We have to do it together. So we have to learn, and what I've learned is to learn to listen and to understand and know that we all have different stories, but we're all here for the common good of the TEA. And it was so beneficial for me. And instead of lobbing in a comment or being offended and sending an email, just having that conversation and that different perspective was massively huge. And so I'm here to say we're here to listen. We have avenues. There's confidentiality that's respected coming to any iBoard member, to any EC member, to say, hey, this is what I perceived. This is how I felt in this situation, not this particular one, but any situation that goes on. So I understand we may not all look the same, we may not all come from the same place, but we all want to move in the same direction, and that is for a better future for TEA. So our commitment to diversity and equality for the TA is very broad, but it's very deep. We're setting up some foundational and fundamental steps to be a better organization, and we're not going to get there overnight. So we're not going to be perfect on this journey, but we're going to continue to push forward, and we're going to all be bound together for our love of this industry. And we can't be divided by our grievances. So please do reach out, have these conversations. They're so healthy and beneficial, which I myself again had this week on a number of topics. And we can't move forward with this zero-sum gamemanship where if I'm not with you, I'm against you. That's certainly, it's never the case. As with pretty much everything in life, it's somewhere in the middle. So again, let's talk absolute open door policy with anyone in the EC to have these conversations. So let's continue to do that. And switching gears, but on a related note as well, in terms of the internationalization of the international board, it's beholden on us to make sure that people do feel welcome and that they belong. There is a place for you on the iBoard. Don't look at the composition today and say, I don't belong there. You do. There are some phenomenal individuals that are within the TA membership. We need you. We need your voice on the iBoard. So please don't feel that there's not a place for you, because there is. I'll stop there.
Lacey, sorry, can I just add one more thing that I forgot to mention, which is a thank you to, I'm not going to name them because I didn't check in advance if they were happy for me to name them, but thank you to the person I spoke to about this, who was concerned by what was presented. And they raised, they said something in one of the discussions with me, which I really liked, which is, we're not going to call you out, we're going to call you in. And that, I thought that was so useful. So when we make mistakes, and we will make mistakes, please call us in to the discussion rather than calling us out, because it really helps. And I was paralyzed by fear of being called out. I would much rather be called into the discussion. Thank you.
And Lacey, I know you're checking as well, but there's a question here on DEI standards applied to all public events and communications that was asked by Justin. The answer is yes, absolutely. We've already started that process. And again, this is a long-term process. This won't be short-term and a one-off. These challenges aren't going to be solved by a hashtag or just one communication. We are set to fundamentally change the TEA and how we communicate, how we represent ourselves. So yes, to answer your question, we're looking at a branding guide. So communications that go out, emails that go out, email, how it's represented on our website. All of that is currently being worked on. So yes, not today, but again, being worked on and part of our committee in terms of one of the top priorities to make sure it's done.
Right. I also got a question, and this comes from Patrick Kling. And he asks, what is the TEA doing to get out ahead of these issues? Finding out after the fact is not an acceptable answer long-term. Are there guidelines for panels being created, etc.?
So it's a two-pronged approach as well. And one thing we have to consider is we also want to give that level of autonomy and agency to regional members and regional leaders to put on events that speak to the members in that region as well. The EC, the diversity committee, the iBoard, we will not be the arbiters of what is quote unquote good or bad. And so we want to give that agency. At the same time, to answer your question, Patrick, yes, there need to be some guideposts in there to at least have a second set of eyes in terms of, have you considered this? What is the composition and makeup of panelists that are on here? What is the topic under discussion? Is it quote unquote controversial or not? So we want to weigh that line in terms of not being bureaucratic and red tape in terms of any event or program that goes on, but also, again, give these regional events and regional leaders the opportunity to speak to their members, because that's the only way that will grow as well. I think, and I hope that answered your question.
If I can comment on that too, that the subject of approvals and allowing events and things to happen has come up a lot. And it's a really tricky subject, a really tricky one, because first of all, who are we to be the arbiters of these decisions? And when I say we, I mean everyone, the events committee, the DEIA committee, the EC. Who are we to be the arbiters and impose our judgment? And to return to this, this event in question, was the event wrong? No, I don't think it was wrong. I don't think the TA made a mistake to put that event on. I think the mistake I made, and I hope I was clear about this, the mistake I made was when it became apparent that there was something in that event that caused some people concern, I tried to bury that issue. What I should have done is immediately got the people that were concerned together with the people that ran the event and said, hey guys, this was considered a problem. And that's how we will all learn, that all the people that contribute to events in the future will learn by having the discussions. I just think it's important that we have the discussions before and after events. And yes, some events, something will be said that may offend some people. And when that happens, we should have the conversations after, and we should all learn. And what, as committees we should be doing is looking at how do we ask all the questions before things happen, so we avoid, mistakes when mistakes do occur. The more questions and more discussion we can have before something happens, the more likely it is that the event's going to be better and beneficial for everyone.
We learn from each of these things. That something that I'm hearing subtextually in all these conversations is the importance of empathy and the importance of listening. And I know that, a lot of the pitfalls, especially from the larger demographics of, cisgender straight white men, of which I am 2/3 a part, it's very easy to assume that one's intent is read. And when somebody takes offense, it's easy to, well, I didn't mean that. Well, the point is, if it was offensive, it is on your shoulders to understand why. And so that's just a point that is coming to mind as I listen to this, and as this morning has unfolded, is very easy to assume, because you know what a good person you are, and they know what a good person you are, and the next thing you know, you're walking through the high grass, and you're like, how did this happen? Well, anybody it's natural to want to defend your position. That's what we can't have to not do, is hear the complaint. And it's the way these things are going to happen. I mean, one of the things about, we can't let them happen. You can only ask so many questions. You don't know what questions to ask until somebody steps in it. And they're like, oh, didn't see that one. You can't see it coming until it happens. So we can ask all the questions we want going in, but what's bigger is the consciousness, being aware, trying to pre-think how you're going to be heard. Anyway, I don't have a conclusion, but I wanted to add that to how important it is to hear people, which you just said, Matt, and everyone, but how important it is to hear with the willingness to be responsible, if that makes sense. So with that, I think I'll read the next question. Anonymous question. During the town hall on the 22nd, why were questions only taken from board members? We never edit these. So Shannon, you want to touch base on that?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. That's an easy one. Honestly, the majority of the questions were submitted by board members. So, what can we do? It is what it is. The EC answered, I think, almost every question that was submitted in January, a week before the event. And we're actually answering about 4 or 5 today that were submitted during the January town hall or a few days after. So that's where you're seeing some of these. I'd like to hope that the lack of questions mean we're communicating better to all of you, and there's just not a lot of more questions out there, but we only had 8 questions submitted for this town hall. So I was a little disappointed, but again, hoping that we're communicating a little better with the regional boards and the boards to the members. So hoping that may be the reason why, but that's why. If you submit a question, it's on our list to answer. Who it comes from is entirely up to you guys.
And I hope it's recognized that we read all of these questions as they've come in. We've not edited them in terms of content or what the question is. So everything's on the board. If it's a question that you have, more than likely it's a question that others have. So it is, again, going back to contextually and answering those questions. If you don't want to ask it in a town hall setting, please submit it to the EC. And again, let's have that conversation, because it's a lot easier to answer and have these conversations with a bit of context or background or history as well. So just want to encourage, even outside of the town hall, to submit questions. If there are questions about the TEA, how we operate, either the EC or the I board or any faction within the TEA as well.
All right, I'm going to move on. We actually had a few different questions come in, all kind of heading around the fact that we're going back to in-person events and specifically in-person mixers. And so we had some questions come up regarding sort of this recurring theme of casual misogyny, casual harassment that happens a lot at these events, usually coming from somebody who is in a very high power, high status position within the industry and targeting someone who doesn't necessarily feel like it is safe for their career to say, excuse me, will you please not touch me right now? Is there anything that we want to say about heading back into in-person? I know this is going to be a really big transition for all of us. And I can't remember who was going to speak. I think Shannon, you were going to speak to this one.
Yeah, I think Melissa can comment too. You know, just in my years at TEA, this continues to be a problem and continues to be addressed by the TEA. I know we've spoken about it at length at SATES. We've created a code of conduct based on this. And just in my opinion, this has been a cultural problem for decades, right? So we have and will continue to address this. Might be a good idea to resend out our code of conduct in the next few months as in-person events come back. But you know, this is a time when all of us, you know, TE leaders included, need to make sure we're listening, hearing each other, watching out for each other, and continue to work on making sure we're doing our part, you know, to create an engaging atmosphere. And please, if you feel like there are other ways to look at this and address this in this association, reach out to one of us and let's have a deeper conversation. Let's put a group of people together and think about this a little more. Let's say, I know it's not for everybody. If someone is touching me in a way I don't want to be touched, I politely ask them to stop. That usually does the trick. I know it doesn't for everybody. I've had some experiences where I've really had to be rude about it. But please reach out to us, because we will address it and we will support the effort for this. Melissa, do you have any?
Yeah, and I just want to add one more quick note. I mean, we all have work to do understanding how our words and our actions impact others. So being cognizant of that fact. Clara brought up a great point in the chat. So thank you, Clara, that you know, our code of conduct and code of ethics is posted on our website and on every Eventbrite flyer that we send out. TA staff is trained there. We don't want anybody feeling uncomfortable. So just be cognizant of how your actions affect others that surround you. And if there's issues, as we keep saying, transparency is key here. We want to be transparent. We want to show the cards. We want to unveil the curtain. We want to engage with you all in a way that's meaningful and safe for our members. That's the most important thing.
And Melissa, I would just the tag on that is that our staff is not only concerned, but designated as safe people at events. And people should know that. If you are uncomfortable and don't want to say anything, totally get the fear and paranoia of higher ups, go to a TEA staff person, they will respond and you will not be named.
And I really liked Patrick's comment too. I know at the tentpole events, we do place the code of conduct at entry points. I think it's a great idea to actually, let's make some posters for every region and make sure they have them so that can go up. I think that's a great idea, Patrick. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, next question. Again, from our comrade Klaus Paulsen. I come from a region where the TEA is not as well known as in the United States. Are there any considerations of getting a better understanding of how the TEA is perceived or could be perceived by those who do not know us and put that insight into action? Brian?
Yeah, thanks again, Klaus. Great question. And yeah, again, very glad to have international perspective. You know, TEA's regional and international leadership is always interested in better understanding how the association is perceived in other places. And we're very glad to listen to comments by members and potential members as well. So, you know, for you and really everybody out there, you know, we would encourage you to come forward with those thoughts, those ideas about perception, and you know, where necessary, how to improve that perception as well. So, you know, please come forward. We are an international organization. We are growing internationally. We're making great strides to do that. Some big things are going to be happening fairly soon in that direction, and we want to maintain that momentum. So please let us know how we can do that. The other thing is, you know, we haven't undertaken a global survey or market analysis. You know, we haven't really talked about that, but that's something that we could consider, particularly as we begin to complete some of the other initiatives that the association currently has underway. We do have a lot of activities currently underway, but that's certainly something that we could consider. You know, I think we would be glad to work with you and anyone else who wants to perhaps push an initiative like that forward and help us to better understand how we can represent ourselves, the association, in other places where we currently aren't that well represented, and how we can grow there as well. So, so yeah, there's some ideas, and thank you for that question also.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I've completely lost the thread. Kyle, is it my turn or is it yours?
It is your turn.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is what I get for trying to type a comment into.
Right.
I apologize to everyone. Great. Hey, here's another question. We have lots of volunteers who are not being currently used by the TEA. How can we help?
So I'm going to take that one. Yeah, firstly, I'd like to thank the many volunteers that have already stepped up to the multiple committees which I mentioned earlier. You know, 100+ people in the last couple of months. It's really been incredible to see how much passion and enthusiasm there is to help. But the great news is, and it's a great problem to have, is there's even more volunteers that we haven't yet managed to get working on things. All I can do is ask for your patience and ask you to please don't give up on us. There is no manual, there is no set of processes. If there were, it'd be easy. We could say, oh yeah, this needs doing, here's the manual, please take it away and do it. We're still writing the manuals, we're still working on building from the good work that's been done over years of the TEA's growth, and trying to figure out, okay, so that happened, that was suggested last year. We now have a volunteer, let's put them in place to move that forward. But it just takes time to process through all of these many good ideas and good initiatives. So if you're a volunteer, if you're volunteering your time and you haven't yet considered that we've utilized you, please don't give up on us. The call will come. We're just working out just how to best use everyone. So thank you. And thank you again to all of the current volunteers that are already working so hard.
If I can make a tag on comment to that as well, Matt. You know, I remember walking into my first TEA event. It was in Orlando some years ago, and feeling like I didn't know anyone in the room, and really wanting to understand, how do I insert myself? How do I get into these conversations, et cetera? And, you know, obviously over many years, over time, you sort of develop those skills. You meet one person, they introduce you to the next. It has a compounding effect. But I think that we're all very, in the years leading up to just before the pandemic, we all, I think, started to talk a lot about creating more systems, putting more systems in place to be more welcoming as people, you know, come to our events, especially new people that aren't as integrated into us. You know, we've had systems in place to welcome new members, next gen members, et cetera. And I think that right at the time when we were just getting that perfected, you know, this pandemic happened, and now we're all virtual, as we can see. So just please understand that we're all still talking about this. We're all very aware of the problem of engaging with more members, of finding places for all of you that want to step up and get involved. We're just sort of tackling one fire at a time and really looking at this year 2021 as sort of the reinvention year. And I know that's the theme of our state conference coming up, and other themes that you'll see within the TEA this year. But you know, we're operating on 1/3 of the revenues that we're normally used to. We have no executive director. We're all working very hard behind the scenes to really keep things running, to hold it together, if you will. And so just bear with us as we get through this. It's a struggle, no doubt, because we want you to get engaged. You know, please, if any of you are wondering, like, hey, how do I get involved? Where do I start? Email me, email Matt, email anybody here. We're all very welcoming people. We want to hear from you. Don't be shy. As we're starting to approach this next election cycle, one of my concerns last year was, you know, in trying to cultivate a new crop of candidates, we had a few candidates that came in seemingly at the last minute, and there was no time to really get a dialogue going and assess and talk people through the pros and cons of running for a board position. So it's April right now, and that process starts in July. Let's start those conversations now. If you aspire to a board position or want to step up in any type of leadership position within the TEA, contact us now. You know, while we say on the one hand, we're busy, we're dealing with a lot of things, we're never too busy for you. We want you to reach out, right? It's the same sort of onus of responsibility that we're going to put on you. If you want to change the TEA, if you want to change the board compositions, vote, step up, participate. If you want to make a change in a town hall like this, send your questions in. You know, we can't emphasize that more strongly, and can't do this without you at the same time. So anyway, that's my tag on comment. I'll hand it back to Kyle and Lacey.
Okay, one quick thing. I just want to be sure. Marguerite had a question a moment ago, and I don't think, do you still have that question, Marguerite? I'm looking at your on my screen.
Yeah, so sorry, thank you. It's not a question, but I'd like to chime in on the cultural conversation that's taking place in the chat and that took place earlier, given earlier questions. And I'd just like to point out that what is difficult for one person may not be difficult for the other person. And the best example I can give you is when I was working in Eastern Russia and I dealt with a colleague who came from China, closer that side. We sat there with 3 Western people and this colleague, and he ate and enjoyed his meal. And he ate with his mouth open, and he burped and he smacked and he did all those things to show how much he appreciated the meal. I come from a different culture. I found that almost physically very difficult to deal with, although I am so aware of that cultural meaning that attaches to it from his cultural background. My point is, if you find something objectionable, if you have an issue with something, please try and realize that you too are reasoning from a cultural background that has been ingrained in you. So this whole conversation where we're saying, let's put a big sign up and only elbow touching, for me as a European is really offensive, because you're stopping me doing what we do in our culture. If I'm Italian and I know you, for instance, Clara Rice, and you come through the door and I want to show you how much I appreciate you, honey, I'm going to give you a hug. It's been so long. And I don't want that to be wrong. And I think that we all need to make an effort at understanding that people will be upset and we will misunderstand each other. But to Matt's point, what we need to do is, when that happens, is not blow it up to an EC or anything like that, but can we reach out personally and can we talk it through, which would work better and which would give us a direct connection to solve that and to smooth feathers over and to learn to understand all of each other better without it blowing up like this.
Well said. It's all about communication. It's all about talking. That was well said, Marguerite. Thank you.
Thanks, Marguerite.
And just a point of clarification, because I know, Marguerite, you're not conflating these two things. Just to be 100% clear, we're not talking about people being safe and comfortable in an environment. And so, yeah, I just want to make that clear. And again, I know that's not where you're coming from. If anyone is feeling safe, unsafe, disrespected, or unwelcome, that is a completely different topic as in terms of what you're referring to here as well.
Even then, you speak up. The first thing you do is you speak up when it happens, and you deal with it right there and then. To stay silent is what makes it most difficult, isn't it? Because then nobody gains. We all gain anger instead of love.
Good. This is a good conversation. It's not your basic town hall conversation, but I think it's really healthy to air these things and to see what people are thinking about, and maybe take some of this content, and I can't believe I choose that word, and create conversations about it at summits and SATs, or on our periodic rituals. So I just think it's great that we're having this conversation, just to be aware of it. And the last question, or the last published question, is how will the TEA help member or companies to develop better practices in a post-COVID world? Shannon?
Gosh, I think a lot of that is going to be through education. One of our core missions is, connecting members with other members in meaningful ways. And as we navigate, through this post-COVID world, through different regions of the world, different industries, different businesses, we all are going to go through unique and similar challenges. So I think providing our members with valuable content through digital programming and State Global, and soon connecting people back in person will safely, allow us all to work together and gather and share and compare notes and what has worked and what hasn't. Even in an age now where we can just get on a Zoom call and talk to somebody, across the world. It's just an amazing experience. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I think it's important too that our members need to reach out, help us understand what your needs are, what you need to learn from this, so we can create some of those panels. Reach out to your divisions, suggest different panels or topics that you want to hear about that may help your small individual business, from freelance to mid-size to larger conversations. I think that's a big part, that we hear from you what you need from us, because sometimes we are in this bubble of trying to figure everything out on our end. And it's just really important to hear from you guys. So I would say engage with the divisions, your iBoard, so we can hear those new ideas and perspectives from you guys.
Great. And we have one more question. Can we get an update on the search for the executive director? Where is that standing? How's the process going?
Yeah, that's me. So we are making some incredible progress. So we just had a meeting with our search partner yesterday. They are extremely enthusiastic about the search. They are overwhelmed in an incredibly positive way about the interest in the search and about the number of candidates that they have developed in the marketplace. Candidates have been developed through really a proactive outreach, and our entire committee is very excited about seeing the final slate of candidates. We understand from our search partner that the potential candidates are exceedingly strong in helping organizations and associations like the TEA really transform themselves into the vision that they have for the future. So these are incredibly talented and well-qualified candidates that we are evaluating. Just to give everybody a little bit more transparency into timing, our search partner has been working through vetting all of these individual candidates in quite a bit of detail. We are going to be selecting our first round of shortlisted candidates in the beginning of May. And then very quickly after, we'll be shortlisting down even further with all final interviews completed by mid to late May timeframe. So we are very aggressively approaching this. We really think it's important to do the proper due diligence. It's about getting the right person in place, not just a person in the office. And just to remind everybody who's on the search committee, so I'm chairing the committee. Chuck Fawcett and Brian Sands are also a part of it. David Welrich, Mia from the APAC division, John Wood with Sally Corp, and then Anthony Pruitt. So a very well-rounded, diverse group of individuals. We're really making sure their global perspective and their influence on perspective of what the TEA is doing and should be doing are part of that committee. So when we do come to an ideal candidate that we want to push forward to the international board, we're really looking at this from all different perspectives and choosing the right person to lead us going into the future. So very, very excited, a ton of work. I can guarantee you nobody other than probably Chuck and myself right now and the rest of the EC is more anxious to get a person in the office, in place. Yeah. So, but we're all just really focused on making sure it's the right person to lead us.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that there's been some questions behind the scenes from people that aren't in the mainstream of understanding what we do day in and day out at TEA, but saying, you know, gosh, why don't we have an executive director already hired? I mean, what's taking you so long, right? This association is important. All the people that showed up today for this town hall are a testament to that. You care about the TEA, you care about the future of the TEA, you want more from the TEA. Our executive director is going to set the tone for the TEA for many, many years to come. So finding the right person and making sure that they pass all of our tests is so important for all of us so that, you know, 6 months, a year from now, we're at an in-person event together. We can all look at each other and smile and realize what a great job we've done and what a great association we are. But we have to do it right. We have to take our time to do so. We're moving this very, very quickly. Trust me when I say that. But it's going to take a few more months to get that right person on board. And can't imagine doing this without Melissa Rumino working behind the scenes and working her tail off to help us get there.
Yeah, you know, guys, it's really about creating the right process to search for somebody like a new ED for TEA. There's so many stakeholders within this organization. Every single one of you is a stakeholder. Every single person on our boards is a stakeholder. All of our past presidents are stakeholders. All of our sponsors are stakeholders. So this committee has a huge responsibility to make sure that we are truly doing the right due diligence to bring the right leader in place. So bear with us, and we are really moving down a path where I think we're going to have some fantastic candidates and a very hard decision to make in a very short time.
Can I just add, again, emphasizing the level of work that's being done is incredible. So thank you very much, Melissa. And also, I just want to emphasize how fortunate we are as an association to have had a tremendous response. Our executive search firm has told us that the level of response to date inquiries is 4 times higher than they would normally expect at this stage, which is fantastic. That means obviously they have a lot of work to do to enable us to have a lot of work to do in order to get to those great candidates. But it means that we are likely to find, to really have some tough choices to make, but then ultimately to put ourselves in an amazing position for growth, for recovery from what has obviously been a really hard time for the industry and for the association, and to position ourselves though for tremendous growth in the next 3, 5, 10 years, which is fantastic, and that's a testament to our association, to the industry that we serve, to the people that we are, to the contacts that we have, the way we represent ourselves out to the external world as well. So thank you.
So listen, we have some really powerful conversation threads going on in the chat. And I think that it would be good to bring that into here. We have a healthy chunk of time to do that. So I don't know, Gavin, Ariel, Cynthia, you guys are, Clara, you're having some good conversation, but would you maybe share that, bring that into the big room, and because I think there's some subtext and threads that should be addressed. We have a great opportunity. Who wants to talk?
I agree to an extent what Marguerite and Chris Wilrich has said, that there are cultural differences that needs to be respected. If touching the shoulder is okay in one culture, but it's not in another, that needs to be respected. I'm a hugger, as many of you know, and I can't wait to hug everyone when I see them in person. But usually if I don't know somebody, I'm gonna ask them first, you know, is it okay? I'm a hugger, is it okay if I hug you? When it gets a little tricky is when the harassment is happening and the inappropriate behavior is happening with someone in your own culture that knows better. And that when you correct that person and the behavior isn't changed. So that's where we get into what Cynthia Sharp has been talking about in the chat is bystander training and making people feel safe. As far as cultural difference, does maybe the code of conduct need to change a different one for each region? I don't know. But when you're talking about people of the same culture, there's really no excuse.
I've discussed this previously with a number of people, and someone in the chat was talking about repeat offenders. And I think there might be an opportunity for us as an association to decide how we as board members deal with complaints that we get, because it's only when we get a complaint or when we see something go wrong that we can act. And I think the opportunity is probably to say, okay, if something like that is reported to the host of an event or a board member, then here is what we do. And this is how we deal with it. I think that might be something we could do, where we can then say, okay, we give you a warning in the event. Has this done? Yes, it's documented. It goes up to HQ, and we start logging some of this, because and you know, most women who've had the situation or men who've had the situation know that unless things are logged, it's after the fact, it's really hard to discuss. So if we start logging things, we'll maybe make strides towards a safer environment for those who may be repeat offenders, if there are such amongst us.
Completely agree. But Cynthia brings up the point that, and others have brought up the point in the chat, that sometimes people who are new to the TEA, particularly next gen, particularly younger members, don't want to rock the boat, and they feel like they're concerned about voicing a complaint. So I think we just have to create a mechanism, and maybe that's where the bystander training comes, or some mechanism to allow and make people who would otherwise feel uncomfortable lodging a complaint feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, well, maybe it's something really obvious, like, you know, you wear the sweater that says I'm a safe space, whatever it is. But maybe we need to be very obvious in what we do and how we deal with these instances. I find it hard to say that we can eradicate this when we all know that those who offend the worst do this very sneakily, because they kind of know that they're kind of offbeat. And those who are feeling uncomfortable in reporting it, it's very hard to do anything if it's not reported. Yeah. So providing that safer space is something we ought to do, and we should probably make it visual, Clara.
Margaret, thank you.
Okay, excuse me, Chris Woolrich has his hand up and has had his hand up for quite some time. I'd like to call on Chris.
I mean, I was literally just going down the line of there needs to be consequences. At the same time, there needs to be a clear way of reporting. So, especially in-person events, I mean, when I get round to actually being able to host one, I've done plenty of digital ones, and we say at the top of the digital ones, like, especially though I've just done an Among Us one, which was a bit different and a bit wacky. I said at the start, please keep to the guidelines, and if anyone has a problem, please tell me. Like, come and find me. You can see me at the start of the event. I'm waving, I'm saying hi to everyone. If there's a problem, then I want to know about it, and I want to deal with it then and there. And then that needs to be like, come tell me, I can then document that. And if, as we said, if it's a repeat offense, we need to seriously look at removing people from the TEA, not necessarily their company, but that person needs to be known, they need to be made aware that they're not welcome. Because we are trying to be an inclusive culture, and we can't have the safety and the understanding across the entire group when there's people like that in it.
Yeah.
And to a couple of the points in the chat, for those that don't feel safe doing so, that's on us as the TEA to change the culture of it is okay to do so. It is okay for you to come and find someone. And I think that needs to be board members and whoever is hosting that event, big hands up and look, come and talk to me. You are safe with me.
Thank you, Chris. Cynthia, and then Marissa Hancock.
Thanks, Kyle. I know you're all shocked that I'm going to be a shy, demure flower with what I'm about to say. I am going to pull this up to a 50,000-foot view for a moment. We have, over the course of the last hour and 17 minutes, prioritized comfort. We took a very on-point question about not feeling safe at in-person events and turned it into a conversation around cultural difference, which, yes, I readily acknowledge and respect and love that we have so many different cultures represented in the TEA. But we were fundamentally unwilling until about 5 minutes ago to really dig into what that question was telling us, which is our spaces are not safe. They are not safe for many of our members. Many of our members fear to engage. And we prioritized our comfort about feeling good about our colleagues and our industry and trusting that all of our colleagues and everybody we love to hang out with at IAPA and Summit and what have you are good people. But I'm here to tell you, all of you, every single one of you, know someone who has been sexually or racially harassed at a TEA event, at IAPA, on a job site. And if we do not meaningfully, deeply do the work of stopping with the comfort and digging into what real change is going to look like, we are going to have this conversation at each and every town hall going forward. Seriously. It is more than a code of conduct on a poster that somebody can blow past. It is more than something on the Eventbrite page. It is absolutely cultural change. And that includes not only accountability, having a clear process and having ramifications, but that not being solely in the hands of people who have enough power to get onto the board in the first place. This is a challenging problem. It speaks to many of the issues that we started out with in both this town hall and the first town hall. I'm glad that we are having it publicly, but each and every one of us need to acknowledge that we have a lot of work to do, and we cannot keep hiding behind assume good intent. People do this from a good place. We all mean well. Not everybody does every second of the day.
Marissa.
Thank you. So I remember the first time I've experienced this. I was in high school on the debate team, and the leader of the debate team added me on because I was a girl with long hair. And there have been many times at many TA events. I just want to give everyone reference. I've been a part of the TA since I was 22. I'm 32 now. I was one of those new industry converts who someone licked their lips and gave me a big old kiss on the cheek or put their hand too close to my butt. It happens still. And I just want to, and I mention this because there's so many people on the chat who have experienced this as well, but I want to voice this because many of you guys know me and I never felt comfortable going to anyone to talk about it before. So I'm so glad that we as a family are having these open conversations because I am so close to so many of you and I didn't feel comfortable. So I'm just so glad that I hope to see an end of this so that when my son or daughter is older, that they're not experiencing this as well. So I just want to say kudos to us to actually talking about it. And even though it was just 5 minutes ago, like Cynthia said, I would love something we did back in the Eastern Board several years ago is we had something on our name tag, a little star, and that meant come talk to us if you don't know anyone else. And maybe it's something as simple. I mean, that's a very, quick fix, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So.
I just want to say something real quick and comment on that conversation. These town halls are not scripted. We go into them with no agenda and no real understanding of, how they will evolve and where they'll turn out. But simply by providing a framework to have conversations like this, I think we have succeeded, haven't we? And, I think that speaking from a male point of view, for those of us that are men on the Zoom chat today, it's hard for us to even stop and acknowledge that these things happen in the world. Those of us that are good men that know proper behavior, to put ourselves in the shoes of women and to understand that these things happen with frequency. We're blind to it. It's not our fault, many of us, that we're blind to it. It's just we can't be in your skin and understand what that's like to go through that. So I think, this is a great conversation to have and an important conversation to have. And we can't just give 5 minutes to this on a Zoom call like this, and we will make a commitment to address this as best as we can within the TEA. We're not going to solve the problem for IAPA and the world around us, but we can focus on the TEA and make the TEA better. So there's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Yale, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to pick up on something here, which was Cynthia, when you talked about it all of a sudden turned into a cultural differences conversation. And the truth is, cultural differences do exist. I am not saying people should not feel safe. I personally am very aware of the fact that sometimes you don't feel safe, having been put in that position numerous times. But that being said, and picking up what Chuck said about, we're the good people, we don't feel comfortable talking. Well, maybe you're not, because from culture to culture, different people's levels of comfort will be different. Different things are culturally acceptable or not. And in some cases, people might not know that what they are doing is offensive, is the key thing, or that it's making somebody else feel uncomfortable. So I think my concern with the way this conversation is currently going is that we're saying, okay, we have to pull together rigid rules and procedures for what acceptable behavior is, and actually, stamp that and impose that on the different cultures we're dealing with around the world, as opposed to saying, in this area it's this, and maybe there are core guidelines that are completely unacceptable, like getting somebody drunk and like sexually assaulting them. That is a no-brainer. But I think if somebody wants to go on and say and go kiss to somebody and say hello, they shouldn't be punished for that. They should be educated that that person did not feel comfortable with it in that culture. I think is the key thing. And so that's where we go back to the question of what is the process? And I think a process is key. But part of that is giving people a chance to learn that what they did was not acceptable. They might not be aware of that. We can't just say, 3 strikes and you're out if they didn't know that what they did was wrong. And this does go and to be very clear, I find that this is not just sexual harassment elements, either for men or women. It could be religious harassment. It could be language harassment, whatever the case may be. This is a broader picture, but we do have to take into account that people might not know what they're doing is wrong. So I just wanted to say that culture is a huge thing. It's not just a side thing. That was it.
Well done. And do remember that all these questions will be published on the blog. The video of this meeting will be posted, and I think there's going to be a lot of initiative out of this. And I urge everybody who has commented and not been able to speak, everybody who's engaged in this conversation, to please pursue each other, pursue the board, and let's find a way to maybe ramp up our effectiveness and awareness of the difference in each culture with which we need to approach each culture. It's nothing easy here, and thank you, Cynthia, for slapping us around.
If this were simple, if there were easy answers, this wouldn't keep happening. So I want to draw our attention. We've got 5 minutes remaining. And then Cynthia, I know you had your hand up. Did you want to say something again?
Sure. I just wanted to make it clear. Gail, absolutely. Yes, culture is a part of this. And I hope that that was clear from the first words that were out of my mouth when I started talking. But there's language, there are great tools out there. There are great examples from other international organizations, international events that have good policies and good training that allow for that welcoming umbrella of culture and a sort of culture of learning at the event or within the organization, but also still make very clear consent and agency, and have a very clear process. And we would do well to look to those. And to your point, it's not just about sexual harassment. It is not just about what happens to women. I want to be really clear. Any gender, racialized harassment and aggression, ableism, religious, we have to deal with it all.
All right, I think we are going to let that be the final word for today. Thank you everyone so much for being here, for staying engaged, for being part of a pretty challenging conversation. I really appreciate your willingness to be here and be present and be part of this. Please take note of who you see on your screen today. Find these people on LinkedIn, keep the conversations happening, keep educating each other and keep listening. And thank you all so much. Let's keep building a better and better version of this organization every time. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.